This video is brought to you by the Ridge wallet. More on them later. Did you know that every year has been bad for video games? I know, right? It doesn't sound very realistic when you think about it, but if you listen closely to some of the shouting that happens every year, then yeah, why do we even bother with games anymore? The reality of the situation is decidedly more positive than people will tell you, and rather than trying to pick out the classics, it's more of a case of finding the years that have had the most classics and stand out from video game history as some of the best years that the games industry has ever had. There's a lot to choose from, and I like to think that there's no one right answer, but I reckon it'll be quite interesting to see where the peaks have been in the past. Could be useful to know what worked so well before, in case we need to bounce back from a slower, more disappointing 12 months. I wonder where we could find one of those! I realise that this video can be misconstrued to be about quantity over quality, and I want to reassure everyone that having lots of bad games doesn't help you in the slightest, much like having lots of chunky leather wallets will just make you sad, when what you really need is the Ridge wallet, which is sponsoring this video with its sleek, stylish front pocket design. And, you know, apparently it's chainsaw proof. I've never tried it, but that is some mighty fine quality over quantity. Don't you worry your pretty little head. Given how advanced we're making all of our things these days, it's a bit strange how little wallet-making technology has progressed over the years. We've got phones that can do crazy things, but wallets are still leather and heavy and too big for our pockets. Luckily, Ridge is here to help out with their sturdy wallets that can hold up to 12 cards with extra room for cash, and with more than 30 colours and styles to choose from, you're very likely to find something that suits your tastes. Plus, Ridge were kind enough to send me one of their waterproof commuter backpacks with a shock-resistant laptop holder and an external USB port for on-the-go charging. Honestly, once I start going on public transport again, I'm definitely using this as much as possible. Ridge comes with a lifetime warranty, so you can buy one wallet for the rest of your life if you like, with a 45-day return window for a free refund if you're not such a fan. Get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping and returns by going to ridge.com/RabbidLuigi and using the code RabbidLuigi. It's time to move your wallet into the future. Alright, let's trim 5 decades of video games down to just the good shit. If you look at each year in any kind of detail, you'll quickly see that every year has good games and bad games. If you were to focus on either side of that spectrum, you could spin any narrative you like about the overall quality of any years since video games have been around. This video isn't so much of a weighing up of the good and the bad as it is a general overview of how I feel about some of the best years in gaming history. So while I could highlight horrendous mistakes like Ride to Hell Retribution and Aliens Colonial Marines that may taint the mere memory of a year like 2013, but if you take your blinkers off for long enough to get a general feel of the quality of the games that came out in that year, you might start noticing just how many games from all sorts of different backgrounds were pushing boundaries and reaching lofty, never-before-seen heights. The PS4 and Xbox One came out towards the end of that year, and so many developers were using this as a chance to straddle the line on what next-gen video games can look like. Clearly it worked, because Rockstar have put GTA 5 on 3 different PlayStations, so good work guys. Can't wait until 2030 when the next one comes out. My memories of 2013 are pretty well dominated by Grand Theft Auto 5, because it felt like we spent half the year getting excited for it, and then spent the rest filling YouTube with all sorts of videos that attempted to unpack this next-gen GTA 5 experience for the people to watch. But it might surprise you to know that there was more to 2013 than just the one video game. People were busy that year. GTA 5 was always likely to be the big headline and a massive release at the end of the PS3 and Xbox 360's lifespan, but Sony had designs on seeing off their console with even more of a flourish thanks to some very hard work from Naughty Dog. They spent the PS3 era making Uncharted games and clearly wanted something different to spend their time with, and just so happened to write one of the most engaging narratives that video games have ever seen, with The Last of Us. I want to say that you could put BioShock Infinite alongside it, but it's been a while since I played it, and honestly, all I can remember is having fun shooting bad guys, and then the last third getting super weird with time and parallel universes, maybe? I don't know, but I do know that Nintendo found enough time to pump out some unbelievable games despite floundering with the first full year of Wii U, most of which have now been ported over to the Switch. There was still a Link Between Worlds just casually becoming the best Zelda on a handheld, so maybe port this too? Might be a good way of deflecting all the criticism from just being run by absolute arseholes. Throw in some dynamite indie games ranging from the oppressive atmosphere of Papers, Please to the tragedy of Gone Home to the frenzied hallucination that is Hotline Miami. It was a year with a little bit of everything, really. Even though at times it felt like just a lot of GTA. Time hasn't done much to change that. I don't want this video to turn into a simple listing of years that had some pretty good video games in them, because frankly, that'd be quite boring, and to be honest, we can do better, because some years are significant less for the game that was released during that time, and more so what that meant going forward, because, you know, some people have bigger fish to fry than just the latest release. This video is only possible because of the strength of the video game industry, a strength built up over time because of more than a handful of highly profitable years, and the industry's ability to reinvent itself every 5 years or so in order to maximize profit. Innovate in a new, creative direction. There's competition between companies, and with only 3 major console manufacturers, we're unlikely to reenact the video game crash of 1983 anytime soon, when an oversaturation of different games consoles at a time of increased interest in personal computers meant that Atari's overconfidence in their shitty port of Pac-Man and their game tie-in with E.T. popped an almighty bubble and left an entire industry scrambling for a solution. That eventual solution came in the form of Nintendo, riding into a war-torn battlefield atop their Nintendo Entertainment System, specifically designed to look less like a games console and more like an appliance like a VCR. And rather than rely on crappy ports of popular arcade games or movie tie-ins, Nintendo had a killer app that wasn't quite ready for America at launch, but was ripping up Japan. It's your boy, Red Plumber Man! I always assumed Super Mario Bros. Launched with the NES because of its ability to slowly repair a broken industry and bring in a period of dominance for Nintendo that other companies chased after for years. On its own, Super Mario Bros. Is enough to carry this year into the Video Game Hall of Fame for how successfully it dragged the video game industry into a respectable state of stability from which we got literally everything else. But even then, 1985 saw the likes of Ghosts and Goblins, Gradius, Paperboy, fucking Space Harrier come to light. Man, I love Space Harrier. That game had so much going on that pushed the tech to its limits and even featured reminders that if you're enjoying this video and want to see more, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications of every new upload. It's not like the entire video game industry was waiting for Super Mario Bros. To lead the charge, since there were still arcade games being made before September 1985, but I think Nintendo helped give other companies some much needed confidence that everyone was on the right track. You can't say that that confidence was misplaced considering where we've gone from here, and I reckon that a reset year for the games industry should always be ranked very highly. Where else can you play Monty on the Run and its criminally catchy theme music? It's all gravy from here, boys. You tend to feel fondly towards gaming eras that hold special personal memories. I'm a big fan of the early 2000s, since I was just starting to get into video games and was loving the time I spent with the third generation of Pokemon, and Super Mario Sunshine and Wind Waker, but that's more of a general era of a couple of years that personally resonated with me really nicely, instead of one specific set of 12 months full of awesome shit. Fast forward a few years though, and we find ourselves facing down the incredible feat of mankind that is 2007, when I turned 12 and the video game industry turned into a fucking conveyor belt of outstanding content. Was there anything significant about 2007 specifically? Every main console was settled in, and perhaps it was this kind of comfort that built a solid platform on which to string some brilliant releases together one after another, falling perfectly into place like a line of dominoes. It doesn't matter where your loyalties lie or what kind of games you enjoyed playing, because the chances were that there was something in 2007 for everyone, especially fans of good games. I was still very much on the Nintendo train at that age, and so my main point of reference was Super Mario Galaxy, which wasted no time at all etching its name into the annals of video game history with its ridiculously high standards for quality and the fact that we went from the midis of Sunshine to a full-blown orgasmic orchestral soundtrack that makes defeating Bowser the most cinematic experience known to man. And hey, this is wonderful, but it blows my mind that this next-gen Mario game was accompanied by other companies' very successful attempts at offering up a next-gen experience for a variety of different game types and genres. This was the start of genuinely massive franchises like Assassin's Creed, BioShock, Uncharted, Mass Effect, Crysis, and also hit RPG 2 Worlds, which was so good that its Metacritic score is higher than Oblivion, if you swap the numbers around. 2007 is far enough back that Valve were on top form, with Portal and Team Fortress 2 helping to beef out the Orange Box, alongside a new episode of Half-Life 2, and we don't see anything like this anymore from Valve, or really any other developer out there. Maybe it's a sign of the times that we definitely still get quality video games every year, but no longer do we get anything close to a bundle of new, extremely impressive, very experimental video games. We were spoiled back in the day. So the inspiration for making this video definitely wasn't 2020. I'm gonna be tackling that mess of events before the end of the year, but those videos I make every year about the best and worst games do help give a general overview of the year and how good or otherwise the games were. Some years are harder to make than others, but in the last 5 years that I've been making these kind of videos, I haven't had a trickier time of trying to narrow down a best games of the year video than I did with 2017. It was a big year for lots of reasons. Since Nintendo had their new console and following on from the many pitfalls of the Wii U era, the Nintendo Switch simply had to be good or they'd lose more ground to Sony and Microsoft in the console market. History and some chunky sales figures indicate that Nintendo brought their A game to the table, but I'm impressed with how the other two responded. Strange time for Sony and Microsoft since they were smack dab in the middle of major console releases, and so needed to churn out some smash hits to maintain relevance in this exciting new Switchy world. Holy shit, they did not hold back. Honestly, the list of stellar titles that came out in 2017 is crazy to look back on, because in recent years there's been a small gaggle of really good video games that's ultimately been outshone by an absolute titan that sweeps up all the awards. But 2017 was so different. It felt like every couple of weeks we were getting another incredible game to add to the discussion. How the hell do you go about deciding what game's the best out of all of them? It was a neat little alignment of circumstances that left 2017's releases looking so beefy. Nintendo brought the big guns to set the Switch off on the right track, and so The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was quickly followed by Super Mario Odyssey, both transformative takes on massive historic IPs that challenged some of the classics that preceded them, but they also had time, somehow, to make a sequel to Splatoon, to capitalize on the popularity of one of the Wii U's biggest success stories, as well as introduce new concepts like ARMS and Mario and Rabbids working together. No one saw that second one coming, trust me. Fair play to Sony though, because they refused to be ignored and weighed in with key exclusives like Horizon Zero Dawn, Neo, and releasing Persona 5 in the West, all to massive, immense critical acclaim. Factor in some other incredible titles like Yoko Taro's Nier Automata, Capcom returning to form with Resident Evil 7, Cuphead making everyone angry at 1930s cartoons, and oh yeah, the small matter of Fortnite and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds starting their rivalry over the Battle Royale genre. Every time I think I've got a handle of all the games that came out in 2017, there's always another one that pokes its head around the corner and says, hey, do you remember Sonic Mania and Hellblade and, oh yeah, fucking Hollow Knight 2? What the fuck was happening that year? Is this what we get after a year as disappointing as 2016 was? Maybe 2020 is worth enduring after all. Maybe 2017 feels like such an amazing year because it was so recent. We tend to gravitate away from extremes only after we've had time for our thoughts to marinate and develop, which is why we may well look back on 2020 in terms of video games at least and think, yeah, that was a good time. Well, I'm not going to wait for that long because I need to finish this video off in the next few minutes, but thankfully we have a standout candidate for the best ever year for video games. I was only 3 years old at the time, so I didn't get to experience 1998 in real time, but in the years that followed, I got to witness so many franchises flourish from one ridiculously good year, saturated to near breaking point with amazing and yet, crucially, very important video games. This isn't just a year full of good games, this is a year that started a bunch of franchises off in the right direction. How did that happen? I didn't even know where to start with 1998 and what would potentially be the headline title from the year. If you want to get technical and look at financial gain, then I think Pokemon would win that, since 1998 was the year Red and Blue launched in the West, and set into motion a chain of events and game releases that leaves that franchise at the top of the tree for profits, and yet that's merely scratching the surface of what this year gave the world. You've got heavily influential games aplenty, such as The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time providing a template for third-person adventure games for decades, Half-Life rewrote the book for first-person shooters, Metal Gear Solid became a benchmark for cinematic story-driven games with some very detailed stealth mechanics, and that's without even mentioning something like StarCraft that still has a massive community around it all these years later. It's a lot like 2017 in a way, but I think the enduring quality of these games is what lifts 1998 to the top, since even the games on the outskirts like Sonic Adventure, Banjo-Kazooie, Resident Evil 2, the second Fallout game, they're all so good. You have 1 year in history with so many games that could feasibly be considered the best of all time by someone, and I would be shocked if we end up with something like this again anytime soon. I'd love to see them try though. This is RabbidLuigi, and I'm not completely sure why 1998 turned out so incredibly good for video games, but perhaps like with 2017 for the most part, this was a period where people had had time to get used to the hardware, and now they were just dumping all sorts of amazing shit in the laps of the general public. And they're just supposed to sit there and take it, not really understanding the true magnitude of what they're playing. Gex Enter the Gecko was some dope shit. Hi, I just want to give a shout out to my top supporters on Patreon. We have La Cookie Queen, Ramon Alberto, Stefan Wode, Jerome Curiou, Fusion Warrior, Sarah Malion, is it Malon? Christopher Robinson, Joe Creamer, M Phoenix, and Scott Riker. Thank you all for your continued support, and if you want to be a part of this madness, you can go to, patreon.com/RabbidLuigi, where I post things and read out names, and we all generally have a good time. And also, what topic would you like to see me cover next? Leave your suggestion in a comment on this video, because I'll be taking the best ideas and making a poll on my community tab, which you can then vote on to decide what the next video is about. I'll be announcing the winner of the poll over on my Twitter, so make sure you follow me so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.